Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. At the Monroe County Election Board meeting on November 2nd, County Clerk Nicole Brown gave an update on early voting numbers.
Moving on to Election Day updates, and thank you, Brian. As I say, in real time, he is keeping me up to date on the number of voters. So, pieces of trivia for you. The number of persons eligible to vote in this municipal are 59,643. The total in-person absentee votes that have been cast, absentee ballots that have been cast since October 11th, which was the first day of early and in-person voting, is 1,702. That's 1702. And thanks to Ryan, how you doing, Ryan? Get better. As of 12:59, 121 people have voted since the polls opened at 8 o'clock today. Yesterday, we had 166 people to vote. We are averaging approximately 100 voters per day. Started off really, really slow. It has ramped up. The total number of absentee, military and overseas ballots is 309. We have had 301 absentee ballots returned by mail. We have 184 absentee ballots by mail that have yet to be returned. We have 36 requests for travel board. Of those, 12 have been voted. 24 people who have requested travel board have yet to be voted.
Brown shared the days and times of operation for the early voting center leading up to Election Day.
There is still time to vote early. We are open today until 6, and I can tell you that they are very ready to receive you. They are excited to see you. When a car pulls up, they get very, very excited, unless it's my car, when they say, oh, that's just Nicole. So please show up and vote. You have until 6 o'clock today. The polls open again tomorrow at 8 o'clock and go until 6. This coming Saturday is one of the 2 Saturdays. We were open last Saturday. We will be open this Saturday. That is 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then on Monday, it will not be the regular hours that it has been. It will be 8 a.m. to 12 noon. If you want to vote early, Monday before 12 noon is the last possible time that you can do that. And then if you are not able to vote early in person that day, you will go to your regular polling site on Tuesday. The only exception to that, the absentee deadlines have passed for mail and for overseas and military. Those email deadlines have passed, with the exception of travel board. We will take travel board until Monday at noon. Those requests, if you want to vote by travel board, Monday at noon. So there is still time.
Democratic Chair David Henry commented that he has received positive feedback from the public on the early voting center.
I've had some good feedback from members of the community that have early voted, and they had nothing but compliments in terms of how the throughput's working and how people are working through early voting. And so, that good anecdotal feedback matters. And so, it's a good exercise, and having a full election in our municipal and referendum voting.
Next, Henry brought up the Vote Center Study Committee. He asked Clerk Brown if she had her final appointee selected yet. Brown said she did not have anyone finalized yet. Henry then nominated Steve Volan to the commission.
The Democratic Party will make its last appointment to the Vote Center Committee. And then the person I'm appointing is someone who's been an advocate for the 45,000 or so members of our community that are adults, that attend Indiana University, that deserve a right to vote and engage in our community. Has been a passionate speaker on neurodivergence in our community, and as someone who speaks on those issues and is aware of those that in our community have spectrum disorder and other challenges and getting out to vote and understanding where they need to go, I'm happy to appoint Steve Volan of Bloomington to the 3rd seat on the Vote Center Study Committee to help us work through the process of getting those going. So Steve is my appointment to fill out the Democratic slate to work on that issue.
The board voted unanimously to approve the nomination. Henry asked if there were any updates on the date of the first meeting of the commission. Deputy Clerk Kylie Mooresland responded.
The email was sent out for all of them to send in availability for the first week of December. We are currently waiting on a few more individuals to return their availability for that. As soon as that is done, we will have the first meeting set, and then we will be able to let you guys know when that will be.
Henry said that he understands if the meeting takes a few more weeks to set up, since in the grand scheme of things, it has been years in the making.
I know it's a little unusual for the election board to have a committee doing other things under its auspice, but it's been a good education to get that set up. I will just say from my seat, it's taken us 12 years and good bipartisan communication with both parties to get back in the room to talk about this. So if we got to go a few more weeks until we get the meeting, I'm okay with that. But we'll get going on it, I think.
The election board voted to recess the meeting and reconvene on November 6th at Election Central. On November 2nd, the Monroe County Commissioners and the Monroe County Council held a joint session to continue discussing the location of the new jail. Commissioner Penny Githens began the meeting with a statement outlining the options and feedback they've received.
So we're here today to update the community about the Thompson project property as a potential location for the new jail and Justice Campus. Before we start, I want to state emphatically, no decision has been made yet on the location. Just to make sure everyone is on the same page, I'd like to review what's happened so far. We have held multiple public meetings, some with the general public and several with other elected officials. It was difficult for me to be in some of those meetings, but the things I heard have definitely impacted my thinking. So far, the general consensus is to have the jail co-located with other components of the justice system, the courtrooms, judges' chambers, and offices for community corrections, the public defender, and the prosecutor. Co-location, whether it is done all at once or sequentially, requires additional land. Co-location will also require space for parking. I and the other county commissioners believe it is important to have sufficient space to meet future needs as well. So with that in mind, we have been advised by DLZ, our design firm, that we need at least 25 acres. As you already know, some people want the jail and Justice Campus to remain where it is. Some people want it on the Thompson site, which the county already owns, and some people want it built away from existing residential neighborhoods. It's important as we move forward to remember what different entities have in where to build. The county council funds building projects. Since Monroe County already owns all but a few acres at the Thompson location, the county council agreed to support having both an environmental and a geotechnical assessment done. The county council is the body which will determine how much to spend on this current project, which directly impacts whether co-location occurs immediately or at some unknown time in the future. The sheriff has stated he favors co-location. Co-location requires less staff and is safer for both the staff and the community. The sheriff has also repeatedly shared his reasons for building a single-story jail. The city council and some of the judges have let us know they favor keeping the jail and justice complex inside city limits. For any potential site identified inside the city planning department and the city council will need to agree to rezone the property. We, the county commissioners, are in charge of all county buildings. We also approve all contracts, including the contracts for the design and construction of new facilities. Because we want to ensure that we truly understand what is needed, we have attended trainings, visited other jails, held conversations with our colleagues, and held community meetings in preparation for our role in the design aspects of the jail and justice complex and on its location. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge the public feedback we have received about the Thompson site. The predominant concerns seem to be safety, especially the safety of the children who attend Summit Elementary and who use the nearby parks. It's concerned about increased traffic, especially with the traffic problems already seen at school opening and closing times. And concerns about the impact that the jail will have on home values. People were also concerned about locating the jail near a Habitat for Humanity neighborhood. We want to respond to some of these issues and allow others, like the sheriff, who we hope will also come forward and address some of them.
Githens added that the Thompson site was initially purchased by the county as a location for a juvenile detention center.
It was actually purchased by the county over 20 years ago as a location for a juvenile detention center. That was before Summit Elementary was built and before many of the homes in the area were built. Commissioner
Lee Jones shared information from the environmental studies on the Thompson site.
The next steps we're looking at, we have received a phase 1 environmental study and have commissioned a phase 2 study of the Thompson site. From phase 1, we know there are karst features and quarry pits on this property. We just received the geotechnical report, which is being shared with DLZ. The geotechnical report should let us know things like the hydrology of the site, soil borings to determine the soil depth and type, and stability. We expect to have a report from DLZ on the viability of Thompson, and if it is viable, what the cost would be to build there before the end of the year. As has been said before, the results of these assessments may exclude Thompson as a site.
Last week I approved 100.
Excuse?
I think somebody was speaking.
Oh, it's okay, sorry.
Okay.
I thought someone was talking to me. As I have said, the results of these assessments may exclude Thompson as a site, but more than viability and cost will go into the final decision on the jail location.
Councilmember Jeff McKim responded that he was glad the commissioners were considering the option to co-locate the jail.
I am glad that it seems like co-location, that there's a consensus that co-location is going to be critical for an effective jail site. I definitely support it. I think the timing of which is still up for discussion, and I don't think we have a good sense of the relative costs yet. I do agree that in many ways it would be less expensive and simpler if everything were planned all at once rather than having some kind of interim transit plan between the two facilities. But I think we absolutely need to commit to co-locating our justice facilities there. I know that we've received the geotech reports, and I have glanced through it. I don't have the technical knowledge to be able to interpret it yet. So I think, a lot of these decisions are going to depend on how DLZ can tell us whether or not we'll have enough developable land once all these concerns are taken into account. Once we get to phase 2 and all these concerns are taken into account, will we have that 25 acres at least? Originally our thought was that there were probably 4 different developable sites on the Thompson property that would give us some flexibility both for the justice facility, but also for possible future non-jail treatment facilities. But we'll have to find out. I mean, maybe the geotechnical concerns might rule some of those out.
Bloomington City Council President Sue Scambaluri spoke on the preferences of the City Council about the location being inside the city limits.
One point I want to clarify, there is a great deal, I think, that brings agreement around the issue of a new jail. Certainly co-location is a priority. Sensitivity to surrounding neighborhoods and the need for buffering, as Councilmember McKim spoke to, is important. As for location within city limits, when that preference was initially expressed, the preference focused on access to transit. Okay. Since that time, the City Council has passed legislation that will allow, for arguably the first time, transit to exist outside of city corporate limits. So the priority, for some of us at least, was not inside the city limits for the sake of being inside the city limits. It was inside the city limits for the sake of having access to transit. So those who have family members or significant others who are incarcerated or tied to the jail have a way to get there. So transit, I think rather than looking at the issue of location in terms of being within city limits or not in city limits, I think we need to look at it in terms of access and transit being a part of that. So I would offer that thought around it. Beyond that, Council members Rosenbarger and Piedmont Smith represent the area and will represent the area around Thompson, and certainly they appreciate being kept in the loop. I appreciate your including us in this conversation. And again, we too are sensitive to the issues around location near neighborhoods, and I think the comments about buffering are especially well taken.
The commissioners and the council will continue to discuss the location of the jail site and listen to public comment on the matter. Commissioner Githens said that the residents can email any comments to commissionersoffice@comonroe.in.us. Monroe County Clerk Nicole Brown attended the Monroe County Board of Commissioners meeting on Wednesday, November 1st, to ask the commissioners to approve 2 agreements. The first agreement, which was approved 3-0, was regarding a lease for the postage machines used for elections. The second agreement was not approved. Clerk Brown requested a separate postage machine for election operations instead of having to share one with the court services.
We used to have one in my office that was used by both court services, and we got to a place where people were confusing account numbers. People were saying you used your you ran your postage under my account number, and numbers weren't adding up. And so when our lease was up, then court services got their own and we got our own to dispel the number, to try to tamp down on the confusion.
County Commissioner Julie Thomas argued that it was a lot of money for 5 years. Brown responded.
We did try to keep the accounts, to use one machine. It did not work. I don't know how to make it work with, where one office is not accusing the other office of taking postage. It got beyond the pale. You have already signed one for court services, and there's no confusion about the mail that goes through court services. I'm asking you to sign a similar one for my office for the mail that we send out. There is nothing nefarious going on. We just want to do the business.
Commissioner's Administrator Angela Purdy suggested a solution.
Instead of having multiple machines, now we still have to have multiple machines because we have multiple departments. But maybe we don't need 4. Like, for instance, the prosecutor has a Pitney Bowes machine. I think that you have one and court services now have one. So there's 3 machines we're paying a lease for, but maybe we could have 1 machine at the Justice Building that everybody uses, and the postage, the contractual agreement, I don't want to put it in our budget, but we could, because again, it's all the same bucket.
They could not come to an agreement at the time and decided to revisit this topic in the upcoming weeks. The Bloomington City Council met on Wednesday, November 1st. The meeting began with a report from Council at Large Representative Jim Sims. Sims delivered the first quarter report from the local chapter of the NAACP and the Legal Redress Committee regarding the Monroe County Jail.
It stated that Black members completed 26.5% of the population in the Monroe County Jail. I will note that is 6 times more than the 3.9 population percentage that's stated on the 2020 census. Now, from the first of the year until mid-January, and this report is from the Monroe County Sheriff's Jail Administration, The Black population is currently at 26.67, which is actually really pretty close. It has been a little bit lower than what we've seen over the years. I do recall seeing numbers years ago that was as high as 37%. So that's where we are today. Additionally, the length and the duration of incarceration for Black inmates, or those that were Black arrested, were 17 days, and their white counterparts were for 13 days.
Sims went on to explain what is being done with the data regarding the prosecutor's office, followed by a statement about equity.
This administration, this city council, we've talked a lot about equity here in the last, at least in my 2 terms. And specifically in many cases, we've talked about racial equity. We also understand that some of these causes are systemic issues. I'd say the majority of them. We also have the main points of racial and social bias. Now, this isn't to blame anyone. It's just a call for this community that if we're talking about equity, and that's just one form of equity that we have to deal with in a myriad of equitable situations throughout Bloomington and Monroe County. I will remind everyone that we have the law enforcement agencies that have arresting capabilities and that actually feed into the Monroe County Jail is the Indiana State Police Department, Indiana University Police Department, Monroe County Sheriff's Department, the Bloomington Police Department, Ellettsville Police Department, and there is some law enforcement capabilities at IU Health. So I just want to bring to the attention to the public, and I want to thank Dave Askins at Beacon for sharing, bringing those numbers up again, or that situation up again. And I just really, truly want to highlight that for our community as we keep working toward some issues of equity. And I will say this, this is the last of my term, but there's many things that this council that I'm sitting on in the previous council that we have worked on from an equity standpoint, including some racial equity aspects. And I am pretty proud to have shared some of that work with many of my colleagues that have equity in their hearts.
The next Bloomington City Council meeting will be held on November 15th at 6:30 p.m. And that is all for Cats Week. Thank you for joining us. For Cats and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.
Do you know that thousands of children go without school supplies every day? Teachers Warehouse is a 100% volunteer-powered organization. We service the educational and creative needs of students in Monroe, Brown, Greene, Lawrence, and Owen counties by distributing school supplies free to the teachers. Teachers Warehouse is composed of 7 rooms filled with books, pencils, paper, and even tools to motivate students. If it's in a classroom, we'll supply it. To donate new or gently used school supplies or volunteer, give us a call at 812-929-7522 or email us at contact@teacherswarehouse.net.